Hi. So I am finally getting back around to reading the final installment of Babel 17. Oops, it's upside down. Babel 17 by Samuel Delaney. I started it this winter, and wouldn't you know, it's always the last installment that takes me forever. If you listen to my Momo, it was the same thing. It was like months later, I finally do the end. And I think somebody left a message at one point that they were kind of honked off about that. But I'm like, here's the link on archive.org. You can actually read it for free if you want to find out what happened at the end. And at this point, like, I could feel guilty about taking so long to get back to it, but I've kind of just learned to trust the process, and when the time is right to do it, then I do it. And so I feel like today is the right time. I have some errands that I have to run, but it's like going to be like another hour before I can head out. So yeah, so I'm going to read the final chapter, the final section, section 4. And so I'm going to link this on the playlist. So if you forget what Babel 17 was about, it was like in 1966. I'm not sure if it won the Hugo Award that year. Samuel Delaney was a sort of cutting edge science fiction writer. This book is from the 60s, and it's really, I think, a perfect example of teaming, like diverse, interesting teams, and how teams work together, and then also the way in which language shapes how we can engage with the world. And I was sort of thinking over in my head as I was in the shower this morning about starting off the next installment of talking about the trip, which was in Memphis, Tennessee. And Memphis was named for the Egyptian, spiritual center, and that sort of the guiding god of Memphis was, I don't know if you pronounce it, Ptah, Ptah, and Ptah was. Essentially, he was the architect and the creator, and that things came from the heart and then were spoken into being, invoked. And actually, I just saw Kelvin had an upload today about invocation, and the idea of how language shapes how we can invoke things. And more, I was getting a sense of that during those early days of social media and the lockdowns and all these narrative threads, and people sort of repeating these chants and memes. And memes is getting there, but it's not quite that really. I think language frames how the worlds that we can inhabit. And in the story, Babel 17, the woman who puts together the team to address this issue, which is that there's some sabotage going on, it seems to be related to what initially seems like a cipher, but then is actually a language, which is Babel 17. And she's, and this is the 1966, right? So it's a pretty edgy choice to have, a female commander who's Chinese and on the spectrum and a poet. So Ryder Wong, she's pretty amazing, and she puts together this really eclectic team. So lately I've been thinking a lot about not only language and how language, having new affordances in language would help us access new ways of being, in inner and outer space, but also the idea of teams and diverse intelligences, and how teams, how you select for teams and pulling people together. And, that was sort of, just on top of mind, because I think most of us want to connect and be part of something beyond ourselves. And there's the imagining of what that would be, and then there's the nuts and bolts of how it actually is, and often they don't actually meet up very well. And so the challenges of having a team and being a team and accomplishing things, and communication is a huge part of that. And so, yeah, I think we can use some new languages, and that's what I was really hoping for with the Playcat Geo project, which is maybe still out there on the horizon somewhere, Playcat Geo in a box, is that we can find a spiritual language that would meld the sciences and culture and humanities with sort of spiritual practice, and get us into some of these higher dimensional spaces. So with that aside, I'm going to start part 4 of Babel 17 by Samuel R. Delaney. And if you are forgetting what the story is about, I'll pin the playlist in there, and you can listen to the first 3 installments. Part 4. The Butcher. And the chapters start with a poem. Turning in the brain to wake, with wires behind his eyes, forking the joints akimbo, he wakes, wired, forked fingers crackling, gagging on his tongue. We wake, turning, spined against the floor. His spine turning, chest hollowed, air in the wires, sparks, glint from the wired ceiling, tapping, his sparkling fingernails, coughs, cries. The twin behind the eyes coughs, cries. The dark twin doubles on the floor, swallows his tongue, splashed to the dark pole, circuited behind the eyes. The dark twin snaps his spine free, slaps his palms against the ceiling. Charged beads fly. The ceiling, polarized, batters his cheek with metal. Tears free sink. Tears, ribs, torn pectorals off metal curved away, black behind the cracks dried that are his torn lips. More, buttocks and shoulder blades grind on the floor, gritty and green with brine. They awake. We wake, turning. He, gargling blood, turns, born on the wet floor. And this is from The Dark Twin. Okay. And you have to bear with me because some of this language is a little bit tricky to read. We just left the snap, Captain. You two drunk yet? Rydra, that's the captain. Rydra's voice, no. Well, how do you like that? I guess you're all right, though. Rydra's voice, the brain is fine. The body, fine. Huh? Hey, Butcher, she didn't have one of her spells again. The butcher's voice, no. Both of you sound funny as hell. Shall I send the slug up there to take a look at you? The butcher's voice, no. All right, it's clear sailing now. I can put a couple of hours off. What do you say? The butcher's voice, what is to say? Try thanks. You know, I'm flying my tail off down here. Ryder's voice, thanks. You're welcome, I guess. I'll leave you two alone. Hey, I'm sorry if I interrupted something. Section 2. Butcher, I didn't know. I couldn't have known. And in the echo their minds fused a cry. Couldn't. This light. I told him that you must speak a language without the word I. And he said, I didn't know of one, but there was one, the obvious one, Babel 17. Congruent synapses quivered sympathetically till images locked, and out of herself she created, saw him. In the solitary confinement box of Titan, he scratched a map on the green wall paint with his spur over the palimpsestic obscenities of 2 centuries prisoners, a map that would follow on his escape and that would take them in the wrong direction. She watched him pace that 4-foot space for 3 months, till his 6.5-foot frame was starved to 101 pounds, and he collapsed in the chains of starvation. On a triple rope of words, she climbed from the pit, starve, stave, stake, collapse, collate, collect, chains, change, chance. He collected his winnings from the cashier and was about to stride across the maroon carpet of Casino Cosmica to the door when the black croupier blocked his way, smiling at the thick money case. Would you like to take one more chance, sir? Something to challenge a player of your skill. He was taken to a magnificent 3D chessboard with glazed ceramic pieces. You play against the house computer. Against each piece you lose, you stake 1,000 credits. Each piece you win gains you the same. Checks win or lose you 500. Checkmate gains the winner 100 times the rest of the game's earnings for either you or the house. It was a game to even out his exorbitant winnings, and he had been winning exorbitantly. Going home and take this money now, he said to the croupier. The croupier smiled and says, the house insists you play. She watched, fascinated, while the butcher shrugged and turned to the board and checkmated the computer in a 7-move fool's mate. They gave him 1,000,000 credits and tried to kill him 3 times before he got to the mouth of the casino. They did not succeed, but the sport was even better than the gambling. Watching him function and react in these situations, her mind shook inside his. curving to his pain or pleasure, strange emotions because they were egoless and inarticulate, magic, seductive, mythical. Butcher. She managed to interrupt the headlong circling. If you understood Babel 17 all along. Her questions hurled in her own storming brain. Why did you only use it gratuitously for yourself, an evening of gambling, a bank robbery, when a day later you would lose everything and make no attempt to keep things for yourself? What is self? There was no I. She had entered him in some bewildering reversed sexuality. Enclosing her, he was in agony. The light he is crying in terror. Butcher, she asked, more familiar in patterning words about emotional turbulences than he. What does my mind in yours look like? Bright, bright moving, he howled, and the analytical precision of Babel 17, crude as stone, to articulate their melding, making so many patterns and reforming them. Well, that's just being a poet, she explained, the oblique connection momentarily cutting the flood through. Poet in Greek means maker or builder. There's a pattern now. Ah, so bright, bright. Just that simple semantic connection. She was astounded. But the Greeks were poets 3,000 years ago, and you are a poet now. You snatch words together over such distance as their wakes blind me. Your thoughts are all fire over shapes I cannot catch. They sound like music too deep that shakes me. That's because you were never shaken before, but I am flattered. You are so big inside me, I will break. I see the patterned named the criminal and the artistic consciousness meet in the same head with one language between them. Yes, and I had started to think something like, flanking it, shapes called Baudelaire, and Villon. They were ancient French too bright, too bright. The I in me is not strong enough to hold them, Rydra. When I look down at the night and stars, it is only a passive act. But you are active even watching, and halo the stars with more luminous flame. What you perceive, you change, Butcher, but you must perceive it. I must. The light, central in you, I see mirror and motion fused, and the pictures are meshed, rotating, and everything is choice. My poems. It was the embarrassment of nakedness. Definitions of I, each great and precise. She thought, I, the letter I, A-Y-E, I, E-Y-E, the self, a sailor's yes, the organ of visual perception. He began, you, Y-O-U, you, E-W-E, you, Y-E-W, the other self, a female sheep, the Celtic vegetative symbol for death. You ignite my words with meanings I can only glimpse. What am I surrounding? What am I surrounding? You? And still watching, she saw him commit robbery, murder, mayhem, because the semantic validity of mine and thine were ruined in a snarl of frayed synapses. Butcher, I heard it ringing in your muscles, that loneliness that made you take Tariq, hook up the Rimbaud just to have someone near you who could speak this analytical tongue. The same reason you tried to save the baby, she whispered. Images locked on her brain. Long grass whispered by the weir. Aleppo's moons fogged the evening. The plainsmobile hummed, and with measured impatience he flicked the ruby emblem on the steering wheel with the tip of his left spur. Lil twisted against him, laughing. You know, Butcher, if Mr. Big thought you'd driven out here with me on such a romantic night, he'd get very hostile. You're really going to take me to Paris when you finish here? Unnamed warmth mixed in him with unnamed impatience, and her shoulder was damp under his hand, her lips red. She had coiled her champagne-colored hair high over one ear, her body beside his moving in a rippling motion that had the excuse of her turning to face him. If you're kidding me about Paris, I'll tell Mr. Big, and if I were a smart girl, I would wait till after you took me there before I let us get friendly. Her breath was perfumed in the sweltering night. He moved his other hand up her arm. Butcher, get me off this hot, dead world. Swamps, caves, rain. Mr. Big scares me, Butcher. Take me away from him, to Paris. Just don't be pretending. I want to go with you so bad. And she made another laughing sound with only her lips. I guess I'm not a smart girl after all. And he placed his mouth against her mouth and broke her neck with one thrust of his hands. Her eyes still open, she sagged backwards. The hypodermic ampule she had been about to plunge into his shoulder fell from her hand, rolling across the dashboard, and dropped among the foot pedals. He carried her onto the weir and came back muddy to mid-thigh, and in the seat he flipped on the radio. It is finished, Mr. Big. Very good. I was listening. You can pick up your money in the morning. It was very silly of her to try and double-cross me out of that 50,000. The Plainsmobile was rolling. The warm breeze dried the mud on his arms, the long grass hissing against the runners. Butcher. But that's me, Rydra. I know, but I had to do the same thing to Mr. Big himself 2 weeks later. Where did you promise to take him? The gambling caves of Minos. And once I had to crouch, though it was his body crouching under the green light of Crito, breathing with wide open mouth to stop all sound. It was her anticipation, her fear, controlled to calm. The loader in his red uniform halts and wipes his forehead with the bandana. Step out quickly, taps his shoulder, the loader turns, surprised, and the hands come up, leading with the heel, cock spurs opening the loader's belly, which spills all over the platform, then running, while the alarms start, vaulting the sandbags, snatching up the hawser chain and swinging it down on the amazed face of the guard, standing on the other side, who turned to see him with arms surprised open. Broke into the open and got away, he told her. The trail disguise worked and the tracers couldn't follow me past the lava pits. Opening you up, Butcher, all the running. Opening me? Does it hurt? Does it help? I didn't know. But there were no words in your mind. Even Babel 17 was like the brain noise of a computer engaged in a purely synaptical analysis. Yes, and now you begin to understand. Standing, shivering in the roaring caves of Dis where he had been wombed 9 months, eaten all the food, Lonnie's pet dog, then Lonnie, who had frozen to death trying to climb over the mounted ice, until suddenly the planetoid swung out from the shadow of Cyclops, and blazing Ceres flared in the sky so that in 40 minutes the cave was flooded with ice water to his waist, and when he finally freed his hop sled, the water was warm and he was slimy with sweat, and he ran at top speed for the 2-mile twilight strip, setting the automatic pilot a moment before he collapsed, dizzy with heat, and he fainted 2 minutes before he pulled into Götterdammerung. Faint in the darkness of your lost memory, Butcher, I must find you. Who were you before Nueva, New York? And he turned to her in gentleness. You are afraid, Rydra, like before? No, not like before. You are teaching me something, and it is shaking my whole picture of the world and myself. I thought I was afraid before because I couldn't do what you could do, Butcher. The white flame went blue, protective, and trembled. But I was afraid because I could do all those things, and for my own reasons, not your lack of reasons. Because I am, and you are. And I am a lot bigger than I thought I was, Butcher, and I don't know whether to thank you or to damn you for showing me. And something inside was crying, stuttering, was still, and she turned in the silence she had taken from him, fearfully, and in the silences something waited for her to speak, alone, for the first time. Look at yourself, Rydra. Mirrored in him, she saw growing in the light of her a darkness without words, only noise, growing, and cried out as its name and shape. The broken circuit boards, Butcher, those tapes that could only have been made on my console when I was there, of course. Rydra, we can control them if we can name them. How can we now? We have to name ourselves first, and you don't know who you are. Your words, Rydra, can somehow we use your words to find out who I am? Not my words, Butcher, but maybe yours. Maybe Babel 17. No. I am. Believe me, Butcher, and you are. Headquarters, Captain. Take a look through the sensory helmet. Those radio nets look like fireworks, and corporate souls tell me it smells like corned beef hash and fried eggs. Hey, thanks for getting us dusted out. Had a tendency towards hay fever when I was alive. I never did shake. Rydra's voice. The crew will debark with Captain and the Butcher. The crew will take them to General Forster together and not let them be separated. The Butcher's voice. There is a tape recording in the captain's cabin on the console containing a grammar of Babel 17. The slug will send that tape immediately to Dr. Marcus Tumwarba on Earth by special delivery, and then inform Dr. Tumwarba by stellar phone that the tape was sent, at what time, and its contents. Brass slug, something's wrong up there. Ron's voice overcut Captain's signal. You ever heard them talk like that? Hey, Captain Wong, what's the matter? Okay, this is part 5, Marcus Tumwarba. And this is the intro. Growing older, I descend November. The asymptotic cycle of the year plummets to now. In crystal reveries, I pass beneath a fixed white line of trees where dry leaves lie for footsteps to dismember. They crackle with a muted sound like fear. That and the wind is all that I can hear. I ask cold air, what is the word that frees? And the wind says, change. And the white sun, remember. From Electra. Part 1 of Section 5. The spool of tape, the imperative directive from General Forrester, and the infuriated Dr. Tumwarba reached Danielle Appleby's office but within 30 seconds of each other. He was opening the flat box when the noise outside the partition made him look up. Michael, he asked the intercom, what's that? Some madman who says he's a psychiatrist. I am not mad, Dr. Tumwarba said loudly, but I know how long it takes a package to get from Administrative Alliance headquarters to Earth, and it should have reached my door with this morning's mail, and it didn't, which means it's been held up, and this is where you do things like that. Let me in. Then the door crashed back against the wall, and he was. Michael craned around Tumwarba's hip. Hey, Dan, I'm sorry, I'll call the... Dr. Tumwarba pointed to the desk and said, that's mine. Give me. Don't bother, Michael, the customs officer said before the door was slammed again. Good afternoon, Dr. Tumwarba. Won't you sit down? This is addressed to you, isn't it? Don't look like you are so surprised that I know you. I also handle security psych index integration, and all of us in the department know your brilliant work in schizoid differentiation. I am so glad to meet you. Why can't I have my package? One moment, and I'll find out. And he picked up the directive. Dr. Tumwarba picked up the box and stuck it in his pocket. And now you can explain. The customs officer opened the letter. It seems, he said, pressing his knee against the desk to release some of the hostility that had built up in very little time, that you may have, keep the tape on condition that you leave for Administrative Alliance headquarters this evening on the Midnight Falcon and bring the tape with you. Passage has been booked, thanking you in advance for your cooperation. Sincerely, General X.J. Forrester. Why? He doesn't say, I'm afraid, Doctor, that unless you agree to go, I won't be able to let you keep that, and we can get it back. That's what you think. Have you any idea what they want? The officer shrugged. You were expecting it. Who is it from? Rydra Wong. Wong. The customs officer had put both knees against the desk, and he dropped them. The poet Rydra Wong? You know Rydra, too? I've been her psychiatric advisor since she was 12. Who are you? I'm Danielle Appleby. Had I known you were Rydra's friend, I would have ushered you up here myself. The hostility had acted as a takeoff from which to spring into a buoyant camaraderie. If you're leaving on the Falcon, you've got some time to step out a little bit with me, haven't you? I was going to leave work early anyway, and I have to stop at, well, someplace in Transport Town. Why didn't you say you knew her before? Well, that's a delightfully ethnic place right there. I'm going. Get a reasonable meal and a good drink, and then followed by a little wrestling. Most people think it's illegal, but you can watch it there. Ruby and Python are on display this evening. If you'll just make the one stop with me first, I know you'll find it fascinating, and I'll get you to the Falcon on time. I think I know the place. You go downstairs, and they have that big bubble on the ceiling where they fight. Effervescent, he leaned forward. As a matter of fact, Rydra first took me there. The customs officer slapped the desktop. We had a wild time that night. Simply wild. Ever been picked up by one of those, snapped his fingers 3 times, in the discorporate sector? Now, that still is illegal. But take a walk with me out there some evening. Come, laughed the doctor. Dinner and a drink. Best idea I've heard all day. I am starved, and I haven't seen a good match in a month. I've never been inside this place before, the officer said as they stepped from the monorail. I called to make an appointment, but they told me I didn't need one. Just come in, and they were open till 6. I figured what the hell, I'd take off from work. and they crossed the street and passed the newsstand where frayed, unshaven loaders were picking up schedule sheets for the incoming flights. 3 stellar men in green uniforms lurched along the sidewalk, arms about each other's shoulders. You know, the customs officer was saying, I've had quite a battle with myself. I've wanted to do it ever since I first came down here. Hell, ever since I first went to the movies and saw pictures, but anything really bizarre just wouldn't go at the office. And then I said to myself, it couldn't be something simple covered up when I was wearing clothes. Here we are. The officer pushed open the door of the plastiplasms plus addendums, superscripts, footnotes to the beautiful body. You know, I always meant to ask someone who is an authority, do you think that there's anything psychologically off about wanting something like this? Not at all. A young lady with blue eyes, lips, hair, and wings said, you can go right in unless you want to check our catalog first. Oh, I know exactly what I want, the customs officer assured her. This way? That's right. Actually, Dr. Tamarba went on, it's psychologically important to feel in control of your body, that you can change it, shape it. Going on a 6-month diet or a successful muscle building program can give quite a sense of satisfaction, and so can a new nose, chin, or set of scales or feathers. They were in a room with white operating tables. Can I help you? Asked a smiling Polynesian cosmetic surgeon in a blue smock. Why don't you lie down here? I'm just watching, Dr. Tamarba said. It's listed in your catalog as number 5463, the customs officer declared. I want it there. And he clapped his left hand to his right shoulder. Oh, yes, I rather like that one myself. Just a moment. And he opened the top of a stand by the table. Instruments glittered. And the surgeon went off to the glass-faced refrigeration unit at the far wall where behind the glass doors intricate plastoplasm shapes were blurred by frost, and he returned with a tray full of various fragments. The only recognizable one was the front half of a miniature dragon with jeweled eyes, glittering scales, and opalescent wings. It was less than 2 inches long. When he's connected up to your nervous system, you'll be able to make him whistle, hiss, roar, flap his wings, and spit sparks, though it may take a few days to assimilate him into your body picture. Don't be surprised at first if he just burps and looks seasick. Take your shirt off, please. The officer opened his collar. We'll just block off all sensation from your shoulder on there. Now, that didn't really hurt. It's a local venal and arterial constrictant. We want to keep things clean. And now we'll just cut you along if it upsets you, don't look. Talk to your friend here. Oh, it'll just take a few minutes. Oh, and that must have trickled down your tummy. Never mind, just once more. Fine. Yep, that's your shoulder joint. I know, your arm does look sort of funny hanging there without it. We'll just stick it in this transparent plastoplasm cage now. Exact same articulation as your shoulder joint, and it holds your muscles out of the way. See, it's got grooves for your arteries. Move your chin, please. If you want to watch, look in the mirror, and now we'll just crimp it around the edge, keep this Vivitape around the rim of the cage for a couple days until things grow together. There's not much chance of it pulling apart unless you strain your arm suddenly, but just to be safe. And now let's connect the little fellow in there to the nerve, and now this will hurt. Ugh. The customs officer half rose. Sit, all right. A little catch here. Look in the mirror is to open the cage. You'll learn how to make him come out and do tricks. But don't be impatient. It takes a bit of time. Let me turn the feeling back on in your arm. And the surgeon removed the electrodes and the officer whistled. Stings a little. It will for about an hour. But if there's any redness or inflammation, please don't hesitate to come back. Everything that comes through this doorway gets perfectly sterilized. But every 5 or 6 years, somebody comes down with an infection. You can put on your shirt now. And as they walk into the street, the customs officer flexed his shoulder. You know, they claim it should make absolutely no difference. My fingers feel funny. Do you think he might have bruised a nerve? I doubt it, said Dr. Tamarba. But you will if you keep twisting like that. You've got to put the Vivitape loose. Let's go eat. You'll pull the Vivitape loose. Let's go eat. And the doctor fingered his shoulder. It feels odd to have a 3-inch hole there and your arm still working. So, Dr. Tamarba said over his mug, Rydra first brought you to Transport Town. Well, yes. Actually, I only met her that once. She was getting a crew together for a government-sponsored trip, and I was just along to approve indices, but something happened that evening. What was it? Well, I saw a bunch of the weirdest, oddest people I have ever met in my life who thought different and acted different and even made love different, and they made me laugh and get angry and be happy and be sad and excited and even fall in love a little myself. He glanced up at the sphere of the wrestling arena aloft in the bar, and they didn't seem so weird or strange anymore. Communication was working that night? I guess so. I mean, it's presumptuous my calling her by her first name. I mean, I feel like she's my friend, and I'm a lonely man in a city of lonely men. And you find some place where communications are working, and you come back to see if they'll work again. Have they? Daniil Appleby looked down from the ceiling and began to unbutton his shirt. Let's have dinner. He shrugged his shirt over the back of his chair and glanced down at the dragon caged in his shoulder. You come back anyway. Turning in his seat, he picked up his shirt, folded it neatly, and put it down again. Dr. Tamwarba, have you any idea why they want you to come to Administrative Alliance headquarters? I assume it concerns Rydra and this tape. Because you said you were her doctor, I just hope it isn't a medical reason. If anything happened to her, it would be terrible. For me, I mean, she managed to say so much to me in that one evening, to say it so very simply. He laughed and ran his finger around the rim of the cage. The beast inside gurgled, and half the time she wasn't even looking in my direction when she said it. I hope she's all right, Dr. Tamwarba said. She'd better be. Section 5, number 2. Before Midnight Falcon landed, he inveigled the captain into letting him speak with flight control. I want to know when the Rimbaud came in. Just a moment, sir. I don't believe it has, certainly not within the past 6 months. It would take a little time to check back further then. No, it would be more likely the past few days. Are you sure that the Rimbaud did not land here recently under Captain Rydra Wong? Wong? Now, I believe she did land yesterday, but not in the Rimbaud. It was an unmarked fighter ship. There was some mix-up because the serial numbers had been filed off the tubes, and there was a possibility that it might have been stolen. Was Captain Wong all right when she disembarked? She'd apparently relinquished command to her. The voice stopped. Well, excuse me, this has all been marked classified. I didn't see the sticker, and it was accidentally put in the regular file. I can't give you any more information. It's only cleared to authorized persons. Well, I'm Dr. Marcus Tamwarba, the doctor said with authority, and no idea whether it would do any good. Oh, there is a notation concerning you, sir, but you're not on the cleared list. Then what the hell does it say, young lady? Well, just that if you requested information, you were to refer you directly to General Forster. An hour later, he walked into General Forster's office. All right, what's the matter with Rydra? Where's the tape? If Rydra wanted me to have it, she had good reason. If she'd wanted you to have it, she would have given it to you. Believe me, you don't want to get your hands on it unless I give it to you. I'd expected more cooperation, Doctor. Well, I'm cooperating here. I'm here, General, but you must want me to do something, and unless I know exactly what's going on, I can't. It is a very unmilitary attitude, General Forster said, coming around the desk. It's one I'm having to deal with more and more recently, and I don't know whether I like it, but I don't know whether I dislike it either. And the green-suited stellar man sat on the desk's edge, touched the stars on his collar, and looked pensive. Miss Wong was the first person I've met in a long time to whom I could not say, do this, do that, and be damned if you inquire about the consequences. The first time I spoke to her about Babel 17, I thought I could just hand her the transcription, and she would hand it back to me in English. And she told me flatly, no, I would have to tell her more. And that is the first time anyone has told me I had to do anything in 14 years. I may not like it. I sure as hell respect it. His hands dropped protectively to his lap. Protective. Was it Rydra who had taught him to interpret that movement? Tamwarba wondered briefly. It's so easy to get caught in your fragment of the world. When a voice comes cutting through, it's important, Rydra Wong. And the general stopped, and the expression settling on his features that made Tamwarba chill as he looked at it with what Rydra had taught him. Is she all right, General Forster? Is something medical? I don't know, the general said. There is a woman in my inner office and a man, and I can't tell you whether the woman is Rydra Wong or not. It certainly isn't the same woman I talked to that evening on Earth about Babel 17. But Tamwarba, already at the door, shoved it open. A man and a woman looked up. The man was massively graceful, amber-haired, a convict, the doctor realized from the mark on his arm. The woman, he put both fists on his hips. All right, what am I about to say to you? She said, non-comprehension. Breathing pattern, curl of the hands and lap, carried shoulders, the details whose import she had demonstrated to him 1,000 times. He learned in the horrifying length of a breath just how much they identified. For a moment he wished she had never taught him, because they were all gone, and in their absence in her familiar body were worse than scars and disfigurements. He began in a voice that was habitually for her, the one he had praised or chastened her with. I was going to say, if this is a joke, sweetheart, I'll paddle you. And it ended up the voice for strangers, for salesmen, and wrong numbers, and he felt unsteadied. If you're not Rydra, who are you? She said, non-comprehension of the question. General Forrester, is this man Dr. Marcus Tumwarba? Yes, he is. Look, Dr. Tumwarba turned to the general. I'm sure you've gone over fingerprints, metabolic rates, retina patterns, that sort of identification. That's Rydra Wong's body, doctor. All right, hypnotics, experimental imprinting, graft of presynapsed cortical matter. Can you think of any other way to get one mind into another head? Yes, 17, and there's no evidence of any of them. The general stepped back through the door. She's made it clear she wants to speak to you alone. I will be right outside. And he closed it. I'm pretty sure you're not, Dr. Tumwarba said after a moment, and the woman blinked and said, message from Rydra Wong, delivered verbatim, non-comprehension of its significance. And suddenly the face took on its familiar animation. Her hands grasped each other and she leaned slightly forward. Maki, I am glad you got here. I can't sustain this very long, so here goes. Babel 17 is more or less like on-off Algol Fortran. I am telepathic after all. Only I've just learned how to control it, and we've taken care of the Babel 17 sabotage attempts. Only we're prisoners, and if you want to get us out, forget about who I am. Use what's on the end of the tape and find out who he is. And she pointed to the butcher. The animation left, and the rigidity returned to her face. The whole transformation left, and Tumwarba, holding his breath, he shook his head, started breathing again. After a moment, he went back into the general's office. Who's the jailbird? He asked matter-of-factly. We're tracking him down now, hoping to have the report this morning. Something on the desk flashed. Here it is now. He flipped up the slot in the desktop, pulled out a folder, and as he slit the seal, he paused. Would you like to tell me what on-off Algol and Fortran are? To be sure, listening at keyholes. Tumwarba sighed and sat down in the bubble chair in front of the desk. They're ancient 20th century languages, artificial languages that were used to program computers, designed especially for machines. On-off was the simplest. It reduced everything to a combination of two words, on and off, or the binary number system. Yet others were more complicated. The general nodded and finished opening the folder. That guy came from the swiped spider boat with her. The crew got very upset when we wanted to put them in separate quarters. He shrugged. It's something psychic. Why take chances? We leave them together. Where's the crew? Were they able to help you? Them? It's like trying to talk to something out of your bad dreams. Transport. Who can talk to people like that? Well, Rydra could, Dr. Tumwarba said. I'd like to see if I might. If you wish, we're keeping them at headquarters. He opened the folder and then made a face. Odd. There's a fairly detailed account of his history for a 5-year period that started with some petty thievery, strong-arm work, and then graduates to a couple of rub-outs, a bank robbery. The general pursed his lips and nodded appreciatively. He served 2 years in the penal caves of Titan, escaped, wow, this boy is something, disappeared into the Speceli Snap, where he either died or perhaps got into a shadow ship. Well, he certainly didn't die. But before 61, the general frowned, he doesn't seem to have existed. He's usually called the butcher. And suddenly the general dived into a drawer and came up with another folder. Credo, Earth, Minos, Callisto, he read, and then slapped the folder with the back of his hand. Aleppo, Rhea, Olympia, Paradise, Dis. What's that? The butcher's itinerary until he went into Titan? It just so happens it is, but it's also the locations of a series of accidents that began in December 61. We'd just gotten around to connecting them up to Babel 17. We'd only been working with recent accidents. But then this pattern from a few years ago turned up. Reports of the same sort of radio exchange. Do you think Ms. Wong has brought home our saboteur? It could be, only that isn't Rydra in there. Well, yes, I guess you could say that. For similar reasons, I would gather that the gentleman with her is not the butcher. Who do you think he is? Right now, I don't know. I'd say it's a fairly important we find out. Where can I get a hold of Rydra's crew? I'm going to take a break. Okay, section 5, number 3. A pretty snazzy place, Callie said as they stepped from the lift at the top floor of Alliance Towers. Nice now, said Malia, to be able to walk about. A head waiter in white formal wear came across the civet rug, looked just a trifle askance at Brass, and then said, This is your party, Dr. Tumwarba? That's right. We have an alcove by the window. You can bring us around drinks right away. I've ordered already. The waiter nodded and turned and led them toward a high arched window that overlooked Alliance Plaza. A few people turned to watch them. Administrative headquarters can be a very pleasant place, Dr. Tumwarba smiled. If you've got the money, Ron said. He craned to look at the blue-black ceiling where the lights were arranged to simulate the constellation seen from Rymik, and whistled softly. I read about places like this, but I never thought I'd be in one. I wish I could have brought the kids, Slug mused. They thought the Baron's was something. And at the alcove, the waiter held Malia's chair. Was that Baron Verdorko of the War Yards? Yeah, said Callie. Barbecued lamb, plum wine, the best-looking peacocks I've seen in 2 years. Never got to eat 'em. He shook his head. One of the annoying habits of aristocracy, Tom Warbus laughed. They will go ethnic at the slightest provocation, but they've only got a few of us left, and most of us have the good manners to drop our titles. Late weapons master of Armsedge, the slug corrected. I read the report of his death. Rydra was there? We all were. It was it was a really wild evening. What exactly happened? Brass shook his head. Well, Captain went early, and when he finished recounting the incidents with the others, adding details, Dr. Tamwarba sat back in his chair. The papers didn't give it that way, but they wouldn't. What was this TW-55 anyway? Brass shrugged. There was a click as the discorpophone in the doctor's ear went on. It's a human being who's been worked over and over from birth till it isn't human anymore. I was with Captain Wong when the Baron first showed it to her. Dr. Tamwarba nodded. Is there anything else you can tell me? Slug, who had been trying to get comfortable in the hard-backed chair, now leaned his stomach against the table edge. Why? The others got still quickly. The fat man looked at the rest of the crew. Why are we telling him all this? He's going to go back and give it to the stellar men. That's right, Dr. Tamwarba said, and any of it might help Rydra. Ron put down his glass of iced cola. The stellar men haven't been what you'd call nice to us, Doc, he explained. They don't take us to no fancy restaurants. Callie tucked his napkin into the zircon necklace he'd worn for the occasion. A waiter placed a bowl of French fried potatoes on the table, turned away, and came back with a platter of hamburgers. Across the table, Malia picked up the tall red flask and looked at it questioningly. Ketchup, Dr. Tamwarba said. Oh, Malia breathed and returned it to the damask tablecloth. Diavolo should be here now. The slug sat back slowly and stopped looking at the doctor. He's an artist with a carbosynth, and he's got a feel for a protein dispenser that's fine for good solid meals like nut-stuffed pheasant, fillet of snapper, mayonnaise, and good stick-to-your-ribs food for a hungry spaceship crew. But this fancy stuff, he spread the mustard carefully across his bun. Give him a pound of real chopped meat, and I bet he'd run out of the galley because it might bite him. Brass said, What's wrong with Captain Wong? That's what everybody wants to ask. I don't know, but if you'll tell me all you can, I'll have a lot better chance at doing something about it. The other thing was nobody wants to say, Brass went on, is that one of us don't want you to do anything for her, but we don't know who. The others silenced again. You're saying there was a spy on the ship? We all knew about it. It tried to destroy the ship twice. I think it's reasonable for whatever happened to Captain Wong and the butcher. We all think so, the slug said. This is what you didn't want to tell the stellar men? Brass nodded. Tell him about the circuit boards and the phony takeoff before we got to Tarek, Ron said. Brass explained. If it hadn't been for the butcher, the discorpophone clicked in, we would have re-entered normal space in the Cygnus Nova. The butcher convinced Tarek to hook us out and take us aboard. So Dr. Tamwarba looked around the table. One of you is a spy. Well, it could be one of the kids, the slug said. It doesn't have to be someone at this table. If it is, Dr. Tamwarba said, I'm talking to the rest of you. General Forster couldn't get anything out of you, and Rydra needs somebody's help. It's that simple. Brass broke the lengthening silence. I just lost a ship to the invaders, Doc. A whole platoon of kids, more than half of the officers. Even though I could wrestle well and was a good pilot to any other transport captain, that run-in with the invaders made me a stiff jinx. Captain Wong was not from our world, but wherever she came from, she brought a set of values with her that said, I like your work and I want to hire you, and I'm grateful. She knows about so much, Kelly said. This is the wildest trip I've ever been on. Worlds. That's it, Doc. She cuts through worlds, and I don't mind taking you along. When's the last time somebody took me to a Baron's for dinner and espionage? Next day I'm eating with pirates, and here I am now. Well, sure I want to help. Callie's too mixed up with his stomach, Ron interrupted. What it is, well, she gets to you thinking, Doc. She made me think about Malia and Callie. You know, she was tripled with the mules and Aaron Lead, the guy who wrote the Empire Star, but I guess you must if you're her doctor. Well, anyway, you start thinking that maybe those people who live in other worlds, like Callie says, where people write books or make weapons are real. And if you believe in them, then you're a little more ready to believe in yourself. And when somebody who can do that needs help, you help. Doctor, Malia said, I was dead, and she made me alive. What can I do? Well, you can tell me everything you know, he leaned across the table and locked his fingers, about the butcher. The butcher, Brass asked, and the others were surprised. What about him? I mean, we don't know anything except that Captain and him got to be real close. You were on the same ship with him for 3 weeks. Tell me everything you saw him do. And then they looked at one another, silence questioning. Was there anything that might have indicated where he was from? Titan, Callie said, the mark on his arm. Before Titan, at least 5 years before. You see, the problem is that the butcher doesn't know either. They looked even more perplexed, and then Brass said, his language. Captain said he originally spoke a language where there was no word for I. Dr. Tamarba frowned more deeply as the discorpophone clicked again. She taught him how to say I and you, and they wandered through the graveyard in the evening, and we hovered over them while they taught each other who they were. The I, Tamarba said, that's something to go on. He sat back. It's funny, I suppose. I know everything about Rydra there is to know, and I know just that little bit about... The discorpophone clicked a third time. You don't know about the Mina bird. Tamarba was surprised. Of course I do. I was there. The discorporate crew laughed softly, but she never told you why she was so frightened. It was a hysterical onset brought about by her previous condition. Ghostly laughter again. The worm, Dr. Tamarba. She wasn't afraid of the bird at all. She was afraid of the telepathic impression of a huge worm crawling toward her, the worm that the bird was picturing. She told you this? And never told me? Well, what was the ending of what had been a minor outrage ceased in wonder? Worlds, the ghost reiterated. Sometimes worlds exist under your eyes, and you never see them. This room might be filled with phantoms. You never know. Even the rest of the crew can't be sure what we're saying now. But Captain Wong, she never used a discorpophone. She found a way to talk with us without one. She cut through worlds and joined them, and that's the important part, so that both became bigger. Then someone's got to figure out where in the world yours or mine or hers the butcher came from. A memory resolved like a cadence closing, and he laughed. And the others looked puzzled. A worm. Somewhere in Eden now, a worm, a worm. And that was one of her earliest poems, and it never occurred to me. 4. Am I supposed to be happy? Dr. Tamarba asked. We are supposed to be interested, said General Forster. You've looked at a hyperstatic map and discovered that though the sabotage attempts over last year and a half all over a galaxy in regular space, they're within cruiser distance of the specially snap across the jump, and you've discovered that during the time that the butcher was in Titan, there were no accidents at all. In other words, you've discovered that the butcher could be responsible for the whole business just from physical proximity. No, I am not happy at all. Why not? Because he's an important person. Important? I mean, I know he's important to Rydra. The crew told me that. Him? Then comprehension struck him. Oh no, anything else. He's the lowest form. No, not that. Treason, sabotage, how many murders? I mean, you don't know what he is. And if he is responsible for the Babel 17 attacks in his own right, he's as extraordinary as Rydra. The doctor stood from his bubble seat. Now will you give me a chance to try out my idea? I have been listening to yours all morning, and mine will probably work. I still don't understand what you want, though. Dr. Tamarba sighed. First, I want to get Rydra and the butcher and us in the most heavily guarded, deepest, darkest, most impenetrable dungeon Administrative Alliance headquarters has. But we don't have a... Don't put me on, Dr. Tamarba said evenly. You're fighting a war, remember? The general made a face. Why all the security? Because of the mayhem this guy has caused up till now. He is not going to enjoy what I plan to do. I'd just be happier if there was something like, say, the entire military force of the Alliance on my side, and then I'd feel I had a chance. Rydra sat on one side of the cell, the butcher on the other. Both were strapped to plastic-coated chair forms that were part of the walls. Dr. Tamarba looked at the equipment that was being rolled from the room. No dungeons and torture chambers, eh, General? He glanced at a spot of red-brown that had dried on the floor by his foot and shook his head. I'd be happier if this place had been swabbed out with acid and disinfected first, but I suppose on short order. Do you have all your equipment here, Doctor? The general asked, ignoring the doctor's goad. If you change your mind, I can have a barrage of specialists here inside of 15 minutes. The place isn't really big enough, Dr. Tamwarba said, but I've got 9 specialists right there. He rested his hand on a medium-sized computer that had been wheeled into the corner beside the rest. I'd just as soon you weren't here either, but since you won't go, just watch quietly. You say, General Forrester, you want maximum security, and I can have 250-pound Aikido masters in here also. I have a black belt in Aikido, General. I think the 2 of us will do. The general raised his eyebrows. I'm karate myself. Aikido is one martial art I've never really understood. And you have a black belt? Dr. Tamwarba adjusted a larger piece of equipment and nodded, and so does Rydra. I don't know what the butcher can do, so I'm keeping everyone strapped down good and tight. Very well. The general touched something at the corner of the door jamb, and the metal slab lowered slowly. We'll be in here 5 minutes. The slab reached the floor, and the line along the edge of the door disappeared. We're welded in now. We're at the center of 12 layers of defense, all impregnable. No one even knows the location of the place, including myself. After those labyrinths we came through, I certainly don't, Tamwarba said. Just in case somebody managed to map it, we've moved automatically every 50 seconds. He's not going to get out. The general gestured towards the butcher. I'm just assuming no one can get in. Tamwarba pressed a switch. Go over this once more. The butcher has amnesia, says the doctor on Titan. That means his consciousness is restricted to the section of his brain with synapse connections dating from 61. His consciousness is in effect restricted to one segment of his cortex. What this does, the doctor lifted a metal helmet and put it on Butcher's head, glancing at Rydra, is to create a series of unpleasantnesses in that segment until he is, so to speak, driven out of that part of the brain back into the past. What if there simply are no connections from that part to the from one part of the cortex to the other? If it gets unpleasant enough, he will make some new ones. With the sort of life he's led, commented the general, I wonder what would be unpleasant enough to drive him out of his head. On-off. Algal Fortran, said Dr. Tamwarba. And the general watched the doctor make further adjustments. Ordinarily, this would create a snake pit situation in the brain. However, with a mind that doesn't know the word I or hasn't known it for a long, fear tactics won't work. What will? Algal, on-off, and Fortran with the help of a barber and the fact that it is a Wednesday. Dr. Tamwarba, I didn't bother with more than a precursory check on your psych index. I know what I'm doing. None of these computer languages have a word for I either. This prevents such statements as I can't solve the problem, or I'm really not interested, or I've got better things to do to waste my time with. General, in a little town on the Spanish side of the Pyrenees, there is only one barber. This barber shaves all the men in the town who do not shave themselves. Does the barber shave himself or not? The general frowned. You don't believe me. The general, I always tell the truth, except Wednesdays. On Wednesdays, every statement I make is a lie. But today's Wednesday, the general exclaimed, beginning to fluster. How convenient. Now, General, don't hold your breath until you're blue in the face. I'm not holding my breath. I didn't say you were. Just answer yes or no. Have you stopped beating your wife? Damn it, I can't answer a question like, well, while you think about your wife, decide whether to hold your breath, bearing in mind that it's Wednesday. Tell me, who shaves the barber? The general's confusion broke open into laughter. Paradoxes. You mean you're going to feed him paradoxes he's got to contend with? When you do it to a computer, they burn out unless they've been programmed to turn off when they're confronted with them. Suppose he decides to discorporate. Well, let a little thing like discorporation stop me? He pointed to another machine. That's just what this is for. Just one more thing. How do you know what paradoxes to give him? Surely the ones you told me wouldn't. They wouldn't. Besides, they only exist in English and a few other analytically clumsy languages. Paradoxes break down into linguistic manifestations of the language in which they're expressed. For the Spanish barber and Wednesday, it's the words every and all that hold contradictory meanings. The construction don't until has a similar ambiguity. The same with the word stop. The tape Ryder sent me was a grammar and a vocabulary of Babel 17. Fascinating. It is almost analytically exact language imaginable. But that is because everything is flexible, and ideas come in huge numbers of congruent sets, governed by the same words. This just means that the number of paradoxes you can come up with is staggering. Ryder has filled the whole last half of the tape with some of the most ingenious. If a mind limited to Babel 17 got caught up in them, it would burn itself out or break down, or escape to the other side of the brain. I see. We'll go ahead and start. I did 2 minutes ago. The general looked at the butcher. I don't see anything. You won't for another minute. He made a further adjustment. The paradoxical system I've set up has to worm itself through the entire conscious part of his brain. There are a lot of synapses to start clicking on and off. And suddenly the lips of the hard-muscled face pulled back from the teeth. Here we go, Dr. Tomwarba said. What's happening to Ms. Wong? And Ryder's face underwent the same contortion. Oh, I had hoped that wouldn't happen, Dr. Tomwarba sighed, but I suspected it would. They're in telepathic union. A crack from the butcher's chair. The head strap had been slightly loose and his skull struck the back of his chair. A sound from Rydra opening into a full-throated wail that suddenly choked off. Her startled eyes blinked twice and cried, Oh, Maki, it hurts. One of the arm straps gave on the butcher's chair and the fist flew up, and then a light by Dr. Tomwarba's thumb went from white to amber, and the thumb jammed down on the switch. Something happened to the butcher in the butcher's body, and he relaxed. General Forster started. But the butcher was panting. Let me out of here, Maki, came from Rydra, and Dr. Tomwarba brushed his hand from across a microswitch, and the bands that had bound her forehead, calves, wrists, and arms came loose with popping sounds, and she rushed across the cell to the butcher. Him too. Him too? She nodded. He pushed the second microswitch and the butcher fell forward into her arms, and she went to the floor with his weight and at the same time began working her knuckles along the stiffened muscles of his back. General Forster was holding a vibrogun on them. Now, who the hell is he, and where is he from? He demanded. The butcher started to collapse again, but his hand slapped the floor. He began, I am Niles Verdorko. His voice had lost the grating mineral quality. The pitch was nearly a fourth higher, and a slight aristocratic drawl suffused his words. Armsedge. I was born at Armsedge, and I've killed my father. The door slab raised into the wall, and there was an inrush of smoke and the odor of hot metal. Now what the devil is that smell? That's not supposed to happen. I would guess, Dr. Tomwarba said, the first half-dozen layers of defenses for the security chamber have been broken through. Had it taken a few minutes longer, chances are we wouldn't be here. A rush of footsteps, a soot-streaked stellar man staggered through the door. General Forster, are you all right? The outer wall exploded, and somehow the radio clocks on the double gates were shorted out, and something's cut halfway through the ceramic walls. It looks like lasers or something. The general got very pale. What was trying to get in here? Dr. Tomwarba looked at Rydra. The butcher got to his feet. A couple of my father's more ingenious models, first cousins to TW-55. There are maybe 6 in inconspicuous but effective positions throughout the staff here at Administrative Alliance headquarters, but you don't have to worry about them anymore. Then I would appreciate it, General Forster said measuredly, if you would get the hell up to my office and explain what is going on. No, my father wasn't a traitor, General. He simply wanted to make me into the Alliance's most powerful secret agent. But the tool is not the weapon, rather the knowledge of how to use it. And the invaders had that, and that knowledge is Babel 17. All right, you could be Niles Verdorko, but that just makes a few things I thought I understood an hour ago more confusing. I don't want him to talk too much, Dr. Tomwarba said. The strain his whole nervous system had just been through. I'm all right, Doctor. I've got a complete spare set. My reflexes are quite above normal, and I've got control of my whole autonomic layout down to how fast my toenails grow. My father was a very thorough man. General Forster swung his boot heel against the front of his desk. Better let him go, because if I don't understand this whole business in 5 minutes, I'll put you all away. My father had just begun his work on custom-tailored spies when he got the idea. He had me doctored up into the most perfect human he could devise, and then he sent me into invader territory with the hope that I would wreak as much confusion among them as I could. And I did a lot of damage, too, before they captured me. Another thing Dad realized was that he would be making rapid progress with the new spies, and eventually they would far outstrip me, which was quite true. I didn't hold a candle to DW55, for example, but because of, well, I guess it was family pride, he wanted to keep control of their operation in the family. Every spy from Arm's Edge can receive radio commands through a pre-established key. Grafted under my medulla is a hyperstasis transmitter, most of whose parts are plastoplasms. No matter how complex the future spies became, I was still in primary control of the whole fleet of them. Over the past years, several thousand have been released into invader territory. Up until the time I was captured, we made a very effective force. Why weren't you killed? The general asked, or did they find out and manage to turn that entire army of spies back on us? They did discover that I was an Alliance weapon, but that hyperstasis transmitter breaks down under certain conditions and flushes out with my body's waste matter. It takes me about 3 weeks to grow a new one, and so they never learned I was in control of the rest. But they had just come up with their own secret weapon, Babel 17, and they gave me a thorough case of amnesia and left me with no communication facilities to save Babel 17, and then they let me escape from Nueva York back into the Alliance territory. I didn't get any instructions to sabotage you. The powers I had, the contact with the other spies, dawned on me very painfully and very slowly, and my whole life as a saboteur masquerading as a criminal just grew up. How or why, I still don't yet know. I think I can explain that, General, Rydra said. You can program a computer to make mistakes, and you can do it by not crossing wires, but by manipulating the language you teach it to think in. The lack of an eye precludes any self-critical process. In fact, it cuts out any awareness of the symbolic process at all, which is why we distinguish between reality and our expression of reality. Come again? Chimpanzees, Dr. Twaber interrupted, are physically quite coordinated enough to learn to drive cars and smart enough to distinguish between red and green lights, but once they learn, they still can't be turned loose because when the light goes green, they will drive through a brick wall if it's in front of them, and if the light turns red, they will stop in the middle of an intersection even if a truck is bearing down on top of them. They don't have the symbolic process. For them, red is stop and green is go. Anyway, Rydra went on, Babel 17 as a language contains a preset program for the butcher to become a criminal and a saboteur. If you turn somebody with no memory loose in a foreign country with the only words for tools and machine parts, don't be surprised if he ends up a mechanic. By manipulating his vocabulary properly, you can just as easily make him a sailor or an artist. Also, Babel 17 is such an exact analytical language, it almost assures you technical mastery of any situation you look in. And at the lack of an eye, blinds you to the fact that there was this highly useful way to look at things, it isn't the only way. But you mean that the language could even turn you against the Alliance? The general asked. Well, Rydra said to start off with, the word alliance in Babel 17 translates literally into English as one who is invaded. You take it from there, it has all sorts of little diabolisms programmed into it. While thinking in Babel 17, it becomes perfectly logical to try and destroy your own ship and then blot out the fact with self-hypnosis so you don't discover what you're doing and try to stop yourself. That's your spy, Dr. Tmarba interrupted. Rydra nodded. It programs a self-contained schizoid personality into the mind of whoever uses it. Whoever learns the language reinforced by self-hypnosis, which seems the sensible thing to do since everything in the language is right. Whereas any other tongue seems so clumsy, and this personality has the desire to destroy the Alliance at any cost, and at the same time remain hidden from the rest of the consciousness until it is strong enough to take over. And that is what happened to us. Without the Butcher's pre-capture experience, we weren't strong enough to keep complete control, although we could stop them from doing anything destructive. Why didn't they completely dominate you? Dr. Tmarba asked. They didn't count on my talent, Maki, Rydra said. I analyzed it with Babel 17, and it's very simple. The human nervous system puts out radio noise, but you'd have to have an antenna of several thousand miles surface area to tune in anything fine enough to make sense of that noise. In fact, the only thing with that sort of area is another human nervous system. It happens to an extent in everyone. A few people like me just happen to have better control of it. The schizoid personalities aren't all that strong, and I've got some control of the noise I send out, and I've just been jamming them. And what am I supposed to do with these schizzy espionage agents each of you is housing in your head? Lobotomize you? No, Rydra said, the way to fix your computer isn't to hack out half the wires. You correct the language, introduce the missing elements, and compensate for ambiguity. We introduced the main elements, the Butcher said. Hack back in Tarek's graveyard. We're well on our way to the rest. The general stood up slowly. It won't do, he shook his head. Tamarba, where's that tape? Right in my pocket where it's been since this afternoon, Dr. Tamarba said, pulling out the spool. I'm taking this right down to cryptography, and then we're going to start all over again. Oh, yes, and I'm locking you in. He left, and the three of them looked at each other. Section 5. Yes, of course I should have known that somebody who could get halfway through our maximum security room and sabotage the war effort over one whole arm of the galaxy could escape from my locked office. I am not a nitwit, but I thought, I know you don't care what I think, but no, it didn't occur to me that they were going to steal the ship. Well, yeah, yes, no, of course, I didn't assume. Yes, it was one of the largest battleships, but they left, no. They're not going to attack I have no way of knowing except that they left a note saying, Yep, it's on my desk. They left a note. Well, of course, I'll read it to you, and that's what I've been trying to do for the last. Section 6. Rydra stepped into the spacious cabin of the battleship Kronos. Rat was riding her piggyback. As she lowered him to the floor, the butcher turned from the control panel. How's everyone doing down there? Anybody really confused with the new controls? Rydra asked. The platoon boy pulled his ear. I don't know, Captain. This here is a lot of ship for us to run. We just have to get back to the snap and give this ship to Tarek and the others on Jebel. Brass says that he can get us here if you kids keep everything moving smooth. We're trying, but there's so many orders all coming through all over the place all at once. I should be down there now. You can get down there in a minute, Rydra said. Suppose I make you an honorary Kipu Mayoskuna. Who? That's the guy who reads all the orders as they come through and interprets them and hands them out. Your great-great-grandparents were Indian, weren't they? Yes, Seminoles. Rydra shrugged. Hipu Mayokuna is Mayan. Same difference. They gave the orders by tying knots in rope. We use punch cards, Scoot, and they just keep us flying. Rat touched his forehead and scooted. What do you think the general made of our note? The butcher asked. It doesn't really matter. It will make its rounds of all the top officials, and they'll ponder over it, and the possibility will be semantically imprinted in their minds, which is a good bit of the job. And we will have Babel 17 corrected, and perhaps I should call it Babel 18, which is the best tool conceivable to build towards truth. Plus my battery of assistants, the butcher said. I think 6 months should do it. You're lucky those sickness attacks weren't from the speeded-up metabolic rates after all. That sounded a little odd to me. You should have collapsed before you came out of Babel 17 if that was the case. It was this Skid's configuration trying to force its way into dominance. Well, as soon as we finish with Tarek, we have a message to leave on the desk of Invader Commander Milo at Nueva, New York. This war will end within 6 months, she quoted. Best prose sentence I ever wrote. But now we have to work. We have the tools to do it. No one else has, the butcher said, and he moved over as she sat beside him, and with the right tools, it shouldn't be too difficult. What are we doing with our spare time? I'm going to write a poem, I think. But it may be a novel. I have a lot to say. But I'm still a criminal. Canceling out bad deeds with good is a linguistic fallacy that's gotten people in trouble more than once, especially if the good deed is in the offing. I am still responsible for a lot of murders, and to this end I may have to use my dad's spies to make a lot more mistakes. I'll just try to keep them down. The whole mechanism of guilt as a deterrent to right action is just as much a linguistic fault. If it bothers you, go back, get tried, be acquitted, and then go on about your business. Let me be your business for a while. Sure, but who's to say I get acquitted at this trial? Rydra began to laugh, and she stopped before him, took his hands, and laid her face against them, still laughing. But I'll be your defense, and even without Babel 17, you should know by now, I can pretty much talk my way out of anything. New York City, December 1964 to September 1965. That is the end of Samuel Delaney's Babel 17.